The logo for Omaha looks like a twisted donut.
I just feel like it's crazy that they thought that this was a good idea.
The aura of that, completely down. Welcome to Around the Block Volleyball. Last week, a new professional volleyball league, Major League Volleyball, was announced in the US, bringing the total to 4 professional volleyball leagues. This week, we're going to talk about its 2 major competitors, the Pro Volleyball Federation and League One Volleyball / Love Volleyball. We're going to break down what we love, what we don't, and everything in between. So let's get into it. First, we're going to start talking about their roster quality maybe, or the players in the league, and go from there.
Well, the way that they had it, it definitely looked like League One was going to be the most premium players. They're founded by a bunch of the Olympic team. So I thought, all right, the play for League One's got to be the best one, right? Because at least last year with how PVF looked, it did not look very good. And I think that's kind of what turned me off personally from watching it a lot. But, hopefully with League One, we've been watching it. I've been liking it. It's been looking really good. So hopefully League One keeps pushing the envelope.
I mostly agree. And I think that this year, maybe for the PVF, it's a little bit better. I think the new recruits out of college, them getting some star players like Merritt Beeson, obviously number 1 pick. I think having her and some of the other players getting into the PVF has helped elevate it a little bit. Obviously, they're not getting the premium international players just like League One is, but I think the PVF is slowly starting to step it up, and hopefully the quality of play starts to balance out. But right now, I'd give it to League One for sure. Moving on to the marketing aspect, starting off with the social media, I feel like both of them are doing social media pretty similar to each other. A lot of highlights and then a couple like other videos showing off player personality and a couple storyline type things. So that's pretty chill. Then we have their sponsorships. League One has Adidas and Resolve for apparel, which is pretty cool. They have Ball Time AI for stats, which is also pretty cool. And then the PVF, their major ones, they have Franklin Sports for the ball. That's its own thing that we'll talk about in the future. And Spalding for all the equipment, which is also pretty cool. And each of the teams have a lot of local partnerships. We'll discuss a little bit more about how League One is getting them in general, but the PVF, because they have their own home arenas, each of the teams has a bunch of local sponsorships, which are pretty cool and good to see.
I got that one thing to talk about for about the League One. I usually like watching out for the shoes that they wear, and I thought it was really interesting that they're not tying them down to wearing only Adidas shoes. I thought that's pretty cool that they can wear Nike, they can wear Asics, they can wear whatever, or they can wear Adidas if that's the shoe that they like. I just think that's cool that they give them the freedom to still wear the shoe that they want to wear.
Now moving on to the ownership aspect of it. It's kind of different between the 2 leagues that we have so far. So the PVF has franchises. So each of their teams are owned by an organization, and each organization's own separate entity, which is pretty interesting and kind of how traditional sports teams are run. So the NBA, NFL, MLB, it's all run in the same way. But for League One, it's a little bit different. So for them, they're all owned under one blanket. They're all owned under one blanket company, which is very new for sports and a little bit weird, but it kind of ensures the financial stability between all the teams, and hopefully there will be no disparity like how other leagues could have it, like how the Yankees are way more rich than a bunch of other MLB teams. Hopefully that won't happen in League One, so that's pretty good. And just to move on to the Major League Volleyball for a second, that'll also have franchises, so they're taking the PVF approach and like the general sporting world approach instead of League One's. And now moving on to one of our most controversial topics, the aesthetics of each of the leagues. We'll start off with the uniforms of each one. I'll go off and say the PVF uniforms, pretty good. I like them. A lot of the designs, very nice. Looks pretty modern. Could match up with any of the sports leagues that we have in the US. No complaints there. Now moving on to League One. They have the same uniforms as each other, but in different colors. And personally, I think all the colors are disgusting. I think they look not great. I don't think they're aesthetically pleasing to look at, and it kind of bleeds into everything else about the presentation of the sport when your athletes are wearing something that isn't very cool or unique to look at.
I got a similar thing for PVF. I actually really like the jerseys. I think the the cool thing is that they're super individual and they're so original that, it's cool that they're not taking something that you see from one of these really big leagues or a big team, that they look very different. I also would say they actually give them team names. That's something that's huge, is that they actually have team names versus League One where it's just the city. I think it's just cool that you can latch on to something instead of, like the Orlando Valkyries. Like that's something at least you can say like, oh, I'm a fan of the Valkyries or something like that, versus saying I'm a fan of Atlanta. I don't know. It doesn't give me the same feel for, when a fan really starts to latch onto one team, I guess. That's how I'd put it. I agree with the League One. I was kind of saying when we were talking outside of this that the League One uniforms kind of remind me of like it's like an international uniform, which I really don't like. It just looks really cluttered, and I don't know, it's not as pleasing as the PVF ones, I would say. I would also say maybe if you want like hop in on this, but also we can talk about the logos. The logos for PVF are actually really nice. Like that's also super original. But the League One ones are so difficult to understand what the logos are actually saying. I'm pretty sure we've looked at them and they're supposed to be about the city, but it's really hard to tell what it's actually supposed to say. So I think that's something that, I just can't really get on as much.
Yes, talking about the logos, PVF, great. They could match up, again, with any of the major leagues that we have. Logos, very similar, nothing wrong with it. League One, I have no idea what's being written in almost all of your logos. The logo for Omaha looks like a twisted donut. It looks like a twisted donut. I don't know what that is. It doesn't look good. It looks ugly on the court. And we can transition into the courts. Oh my God. The courts, they have the same color schemes matching the uniforms. And moving on to back to the colors. The colors are extremely ugly neon. I don't like it on any of the uniforms. None of them are a good choice for coloring. It is nothing like I've ever seen on any uniform for any professional league ever. It's just ugly, and the base is navy blue for whatever reason on all these uniforms. I don't know why they didn't pick black. I don't know why they didn't pick white, but the base is navy blue, and it clashes with a lot of the colors, and it doesn't go well with neon, in my opinion. So I don't like it.
Another thing about that, actually, the game yesterday, I believe, for League One, it was Madison that was playing. They actually were wearing long sleeve jerseys for the first time. I thought that was also a really odd switch up. I'm curious to see what the other long sleeve jerseys look like for the other teams, because Madison is also it's blue, so it matches with the dark navy. I'm curious, do the other League One teams, when they wear a long sleeve jersey, is that going to look very different? I don't know if I'm going to say excited to see it, but I'm interested to see, is it going to look exactly the same for the jerseys, or are we going to get something hopefully a little bit nicer to look at?
And now we can talk about the ball that they're using in each of the leagues. Again, for PVF, I think I said that it was Franklin. It's a fine ball. It kind of looks similar to like more standard volleyballs, and it's branded to the league's colors, which is black and yellow. Looks okay. I'm not used to it in particular. I think it looks fine, just different. And then the League One volleyball, what are we doing? It looks like a soccer ball with some extra lines on it. It's like you tried to fuse like a molten ball with a soccer ball. I don't know what's going on. I don't really like it. Again, kind of ugly, and it's not exactly distracting, but every time I notice it, all I can think is, why does this ball look so funny? So that's not very nice, but at least it's a unique ball for the league, I guess.
It kind of reminds me when we would watch the college games, and we would see it was USC. USC was the one that had I don't know what the ball was or what their sponsorship was. I think it was Nike. It was Nike or Adidas. And that ball also looked really weird. But, this is the whole league. Everyone is using the same ball. I think the way it looks like, or the way that I feel like it would play, seems like it would be good, because it reminds me of those what is it, the Mikasa balls kind of. It reminds me of those, but the looks it's crazy. I really don't like how it looks. To me, it is actually a little distracting. I usually don't get distracted by the ball. I usually don't care, but that one it's going to take some time to get used to for me, for sure.
And the last thing about the aesthetics of the league in general, I'm just going to talk about the merch really quick. Both leagues have merch. It's kind of just the same designs and aesthetics from their uniforms, and it's just put into different merch forms. Same complaints, but generally it's fine. Pretty cool to have merch. Good things.
I think the good thing for PVF though, or for League One, sorry, is they actually have Adidas as their merch partner at least. So, like the jerseys or the sweatshirts and the shirts, I think those are actually pretty cool. Maybe it's just because it's a big company, but I think at least because it's Adidas, it seems a little bit nicer.
Okay, moving on after that extremely negative note from us, we're going to talk about something positive, which is more the fan engagement and community building aspect of the leagues. League One, let's start here. Extremely good. As an organization, their main thing is starting youth programs and helping out clubs and running clinics and promoting the youth programs, which is extremely good. Very nice. You love to see it. Perfect. The PVF, while not being as involved with the club scene like that, they still support a lot of their local clubs and have these teams come out to watch their games. Super cool. I'm glad that they're helping to get the communities engaged with the sport. A lot of the youth players are going to be able to see professionals who are probably local players, or some of them are local players, and see what they could aim to be for in the future, which is super cool.
I think one thing when I watch the League One games is they actually have ads for the youth programs that they are trying to push, which, it's the ads are working on me. It makes me feel like, oh wow, that's really cool that they have the pros that they're still in the US, but then they let them interact with these younger kids. Like, I feel like that's really cool that they're showing that off, and that's something that they're trying to advertise out, that they're willing to help grow the sport in the US, which I feel like is only going to help the leagues and hopefully help them sustain this time.
All right, now moving on to the next topic, we're going to talk about the scheduling for both of the leagues, which is a little bit weird. I think League One is definitely the super weird one in that they do either like a Wednesday or a Thursday game and then do a weekend. And the Wednesday Thursday game is at one location, and then the weekend games are all located in the same place. So teams can be playing where there's no home team at all, which is a little bit weird. I personally don't like that. I think it kind of shows in the stadiums and stands when you watch the games. When there's no home team involved, the stands are empty, and it's kind of depressing to look at, to see that an empty crowd where fans are not there showing out. And I don't blame the fans and I don't blame the players, because it's not their fault. It's a scheduling thing where no one, especially with the way that the League One is organized, where they have a lot of local players on each team, or players that played in that respective college. No one's showing up to watch no one's showing up to Omaha to watch a team full of Texas players, and then another team filled with other players. No one's coming to watch them because you're not fans of any of them, and you have no incentive to come and watch. So I don't like that. On the other hand, the PVF does it right. There's always a home team. Players are traveling all the time, which kind of sucks. There's a lot of travel involved, but the stands, it shows good things. The stands are filled and people are watching, and there's always a home team. People root for the home team. I'm sure some people root for the away teams, but it's really nice to see for the PVF.
Yeah, last night we were watching the Madison-Atlanta game, and that was at Omaha, and Omaha was playing the game afterwards against Austin. And that was where we saw it, and we talked about it, where we were like, why is Madison versus Atlanta, where I feel like there's a lot of good players on both teams, but then it looked like the stands were night and day versus some of the other games that they've had the showing for this season already. And you could even compare it to the game afterwards, where it looked like it was pretty much a packed arena versus the game right before, and it felt like it was maybe at 30-40%, I would say, probably, which it sucks. I feel like that kind of impacts the players and the viewing experience too, where it kind of shows up on TV where it doesn't feel like there's as much energy because there's just not as many fans there. I'd say that definitely makes it a little bit less fun to watch. Not because of the play or anything, just maybe a little bit less energy.
Going off of that, going back to the marketing aspect, it's not good for marketing when you see highlights of plays happening and the crowd is empty, the crowd isn't going crazy. When the crowd is full, you can tell. You can hear it in these like clips. You can hear it in the broadcast. You can hear the cheering, and there are amazing plays being made, and they're not getting the crowd interaction that they need to be having. Like, imagine watching a Steph Curry highlight. He's hitting a game winner. There's no one in the crowd. It's empty. The aura of that completely down. It's so lame to look at when amazing things are happening. But like, there are crazy highlights that they are posting and the crowd is empty. It's just not good from like an outwards appearance. Like, someone who just looks at clips will go, wow, no one wants to watch this because it's empty. One more thing about scheduling is that I really like, that other major leagues really all have, is an all-star game. So the PVF has an all-star game. Super cool. I love to see it. I love to see like a super team around the league being formed. League One kind of already has its own super teams, but seeing like the 14-ish best players play against each other on the court at one time, it's super cool. And I think it's like a fun like event type thing to happen. I know League One has some events for like some bigger weekends that they're trying to have, but I don't think it matches up quite to like having an all-star game, especially because the fan interaction can be super cool.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if maybe it has to do with the amount of teams that are in League One, where that might make it a little bit harder to do because they only have 8 teams. And I mean, pretty much every team feels like it. You look at it and you're like, wow, that feels like a super team. But then you look at the next team right next to it, it's like, wow, all right, that team looks like they could be even better. They're stacked. But maybe with PVF, I think what's cool is the young players that just got drafted in. I think that's really cool because a lot of them were playing in the NCAA tournament. That's where a lot of the viewership was. And hopefully that carries through a little bit through into PVF and League One. And that could help out the all-star stuff. I'm kind of curious to see, does a Merritt B, since she got drafted first, does that impact her getting voted for an all-star season? I know, it still depends on how well she plays, but, I'm curious to see how that's gonna end up.
All right, next we're gonna talk about the media distribution and how things are able to be watched for both leagues. So starting off with the PVF, it's been mostly available on YouTube so far. Not too much TV. I think they've had some time on CBS. They've been on SF1 or FS1, FS2 maybe, but it's mostly been on YouTube, which is not great. I heard that in its first year last year, the PVF had some troubles. They were supposed to have a lot more CBS games, but it fell through somehow, so it all ended up on YouTube. Not great to hear, and it kind of sucks because I think the PVF puts out a good product. It's just you can't find the media deals, and that's obviously where most of the money is going to come from. Oh, and I think the PVF also has Roku coming up as a streaming platform this season. And for League One, they are mostly on, or in terms of nationally, they're pretty much on ESPN, even though it's mostly ESPN Plus. They have a couple ESPN games, and otherwise I think everything is through their own website streaming, which is fine. It's not as accessible as YouTube, but it's easy to sign up for. It's free. You just have to kind of get into their newsletter, which is a little weird. I understand why. It's just not as smooth of an experience.
I think it's interesting comparing the two because it kind of feels like with PVF, it doesn't feel as official because it's mainly on YouTube right now. But I think that's what makes it hopefully a little bit more accessible to regular watchers. But with League One, the ESPN Plus games, I mean, it's super cool to see that they're on ESPN. And it's not just NCAA games anymore. It's really cool to see that. But then you see them that you have to be signed in for League One or LOVB Pro, or I don't know what it is, but the fact that you have to sign up for an account to watch it, I feel like that just adds like an extra barrier of entry to get a regular viewer. That probably means that you probably need more of the, I guess, diehard fans that you'd call it, that would end up actually watching it, which I think is very interesting. It's just interesting that I don't know if I would give one league a, an extra head up on it versus another league on how the viewership goes, but I don't know. I think they're both pretty good, but it's interesting to see the two.
Just wanted to remember that last year, I think the San Diego Mojo in the PVF, they had a tie setter, and she was super good, but oh my god, the viewership, especially because it was on YouTube, the viewership for their games was super crazy. And the League One also has an incredible tie libero, but I don't think the viewership is going to be quite the same because it's not as easily accessible. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think tie fans are going to go out of their way to sign up for the League One website, League One newsletter, to try and watch these games because they're not American. They don't need to hear about all this. So kind of interesting, kind of weird. Still talking about media, we can talk about kind of the broadcasting situation we have going on. I'm a lot more strongly opinionated about this, and I'll just let it out first. I don't really like the way that each of the games are being announced. Not majorly. I think the announcing, for the most part, is fine. And I think that we're doing the best that we can. Announcing for volleyball is extremely hard. I completely acknowledge that, but I think where I really feel a lacking is whenever there's highlight plays. So whenever there's highlight plays, I feel like the announcer energy for both leagues is super low, not super low, but it is not as hype as like, say, a Mike Breen bang in basketball. That's when you know instantly something incredible has happened. Everyone's ready to go wild. Everyone loves hearing that. But when those types of things happen in League One or PVF, the announcers kind of wait a second and then they're like, and they slam the ball. Same reaction that they'd have for any other kill. Not really cool, not bringing the hype plays, not bringing the kind of viral moments that you'd want to have for these leagues, which could help them grow. Because right now, I think everything just ends up being a TikTok edit where there's music playing over it, some sort of extra thing going over it, and not the announcing. The announcing, in my opinion, it's a big deal, but I don't know if it really affects the regular game watching experience.
I think that also goes back to when I was talking about the energy. I feel, at least what he's saying is that it does kind of make sense that the announcers definitely add to the viewership for the people that are watching at home and they're watching on TV. That can make it feel a lot less fun when the announcers aren't as good. I would say that I never really thought the announcers were very good unless it was the Olympics. And shout out Paul Sunderland. He's great. He's actually like just the GOAT now. I don't know if you want to look this up, but it is whatever the lady is that does the announcing. She usually works the NCAA games, I'm pretty sure. And she's also been doing the ESPN games, I would say. I don't know her name. Sorry. Shout out to you. You're also really good. I like you. But it is kind of tough because, I feel like the announcers can bring a lot of energy for a play that maybe even if fans weren't getting up about it, the announcer can add some energy to the people that are watching on TV.
Now let's move on to kind of player compensation salary type topic. Obviously, we don't know each player's salaries. I don't think that's necessarily public for each and every single player. But I think having a new league like the MLV, it's going to help players a lot, but it's probably not good for the leagues in the long run, where obviously we want everyone to be paid fairly and what they deserve, but this is going to inflate salaries as these leagues are going to be fighting over players. And when we've had so many failed volleyball leagues already in the US, it's going to be difficult to see these organizations run out of money so fast because you have to pay players so much. I'm worried, but it's good that everyone's getting their bag while they can. So mixed feelings.
I don't know if we were going to talk about this, but I do kind of just have to rant. I can't believe that there's going to be another league now. I just feel like it's crazy that they thought that this was a good idea to not only release PVF and League One. Generally, it's a year apart. It was only a year apart, but now you're adding one more league to it. I just think, like, what is the outlook for MLV going to look like? I don't know what players are they going to be able to get. Are they going to be able to poach players from League One or PVF? Like, I don't know what they're gonna end up doing, because a lot of League One players that are super huge, you're not taking them because they are investors and they are founders of the league, so they're not going anywhere. I don't know if they're relying on hopefully more big names from college to come up, and that can help them with viewership, but I wouldn't say that they missed the boat on it, but there were a lot of big names. I mean, Madison Skinner was the name for the past 2-3 years because she won 3. She had that commercial that would always show up for the NCAA, which I thought was really cool. Like, that was super cool that she was able to do that, but, you know, she's going to be on League One. I'm going to assume that she's going to stay with League One unless they pay her a lot of money, because that's probably the best play for league-wise. And I don't know if we want to talk about it, but it feels like that's going to be kind of the league, at least for now, that's going to look at the Olympic team. I don't know if that's going to be something. We'll see.
It's super weird. I don't know how to feel about this, but I think that all of the national team players being kind of in one league and kind of owning the league, at least in the short term, it's going to be super weird, because everyone that wants to play at that level, be in the national team gym, is probably going to want to play in that league, and it's super biased when I don't necessarily know if it's the best league as a far future growth type thing. I don't know if they're going to be like the strongest league, or if they have the foundation to be like a true like MLB, NBA, NFL type thing. So kind of weird. And I did want to point out one thing, that MLV has already poached the Omaha Supernovas out of the PVF. Super interesting. That's the first of their 10 teams that they're trying to get. So another interesting thing. Hopefully it ends up working well, and we'll see if they end up poaching more teams from the PVF, because that would be kind of spicy.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that. It's kind of scary, and I was the one that was actually supporting both leagues coming out. I actually thought at first that was a good thing. Obviously, you know, they're going to be competing against each other, but I thought that it's a good thing that there's 2 leagues at the same time, so one league doesn't just have a monopoly over it. Like, I don't know if people watching would know, but there's like the NFL, and then I think it's called the CFL, where the NFL is way bigger, obviously. But then there's still an extra league for football, where I don't know what's going to happen with League One, MLV, PVF, where one might get super popular, and then I don't know what's going to happen to the other one. But I was kind of excited that they have to compete against each other. They have to put out a better product than the other, which can hopefully push, you know, maybe just more sustainability, that one league is going to end up doing really well. Maybe they absorb each other. I don't really know now with this third league coming out. It just feels like there's too much competition now, and I don't know if it's going to really be sustainable at this point. I really hope so, though. I really do hope so.
One interesting thing that is just a small topic, but talking about international players in both leagues and probably coming into the MLV also. We've seen a lot of superstar international players. Obviously not the top players, but we've seen some pretty good players. The international liberos, especially in League One, so good. It's crazy that we're able to get this level of defense. So super fun to watch. And something interesting that could happen in the future, that happens in other leagues, is, well, other leagues being international volleyball leagues, would be that some teams have caps on the number of imported players that you can have. I don't necessarily know if we're ever going to have that problem because we have so many US-born players, but it's just an interesting note to have, to see if these leagues, any of these leagues start going very well, that some international superstars will start coming in, taking over the league. Will we have to cap the number of international players ever? Or is it just good for the game to have the best players possible? NBA doesn't have any international player caps or anything, and they're doing fine. They're doing great, actually. So we'll see how it goes. It's just something that happens in volleyball and some other sports also. So we'll see how it goes. Next, we're going to talk about expansion and the locations for each of the teams and in each of the leagues. So we're obviously seeing that a lot of the teams are picking the same locations, same types of locations to start off in. Everyone's staying kind of like Midwest, South, and California, those general areas. No Northeast teams. Kind of sucks. Would be nice. I don't know if we'll support it, but would be nice for us. But it's going to be super interesting to see, especially with the MLV promising 10 teams in 10 different locations. It'll be interesting to see how much overlap there's going to be. Obviously, they stole Omaha, so there will be no 3 Omaha teams, which would be super weird. So that's good at least, but seeing more places with doubled up teams, I don't know if that's good. I don't know if I like it for Omaha right now already. So that's just an interesting idea to put out now that we're having these 3 leagues.
I think it is a little scary with where these locations going to be, because I think it was a little bit easier to start off with, that they could choose the locations based off of, how big is it in high school and in club, and obviously in college, because Nebraska, Texas, those are states where obviously you're going to have, it makes sense to have a team there because that's where all the players are. That's where all the players are at. That's where the fans are at. I think that makes it a lot easier to transition that. Like with the Austin team for League One, that's a lot of Texas players. They can easily just make Texas fans want to watch Austin. And same thing for Omaha, for League One. Those Nebraska fans can just be Omaha fans. I don't know how it's going to go with MLV. If they're willing to set up like a Northeast team or California, how is that going to look compared to maybe really big schools like a Stanford or something like that, or Philly or Penn State? Because that's where I find it very interesting that they're trying to set up 10 teams, where those locations are going to end up.
Actually, I think they have announced the states maybe. I don't think specific locations, but in their announcement, they had Wisconsin, California, Minnesota, Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, Kansas, Ohio, and Washington. So a couple of repeats potentially. I don't know how far away they're going to be from each other, what cities specifically they're going to choose, but it looks like we could have some overlap depending on what happens. I'm assuming that Wisconsin, it'll be Madison for both, but I don't know Wisconsin cities that well, so I could just be wrong. To wrap it up, we'll just give our final thoughts about the PVF, MLV, League One, Love Volleyball. I just want to say that although I have a lot of gripes with the way that League One is done, and I think that PVF is better in a lot of these like aesthetics and like type styles, I really, really like the play in League One. It is so much more fun to watch, and the quality of play is so high. Obviously, I think that the PVF is super fun as a product, but when you want to watch high-level volleyball, I would always pick League One over the PVF. Not to say that PVF doesn't have high-level volleyball sometimes. I just think it's a little bit lower. They have some moments where things get a little shaky. You have us looking at the screen going, what was that? But yeah, I like both leagues. I think that if we take the best things from each of these leagues, we're going to have an insanely good product. And I do think that could be the future of volleyball. And I think it could be something sustainable in the U.S. It's just making sure we're able to grab the right aspects from all these things, making them all into one. Maybe MLV will have the money, the sponsors, to do that, absorb these other leagues, turn it into one super great product. But as of right now, I'm still a little bit worried because I don't think any of these leagues have it down perfect.
Yeah, the fan in me wants to just kind of ignore that part, and I want to just enjoy the volleyball, have fun watching it, because I've always had fun watching it. Like, I always have fun when I know the NCAA season is kicking up. And the tournament, I love watching the tournament, but Yeah, I mean, me personally, I would also say I like watching League One more. I think the names kind of make it a little bit easier for me to get into it. But PVF, I do really like watching certain players. I think that's what makes me still come out to watch them is, being a fan of Merritt Beeson or Anna DeBeer and Elena Scott. Like, that makes me want to watch them more. But League One, I kind of see myself gravitating more towards watching those games at least more frequently. And I feel like because of the play, I think that's what makes it, that upper echelon where PVF is still good, but I just find myself watching League One a lot more.
All right, I think that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching. And if you could, please like and subscribe. Comment anything. Let us know if you want to see any videos in the future or what you thought about any of these topics. First thing that you guys should comment who has the best logo any of these teams. Because I know it's not going to be League One.
It is not going to be a League One team. There's no way. If you are, that's crazy. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.